The gymnasium echoed with applause for every other graduate. When my name was called, I walked across the stage alone. The principal handed me my diploma, his smile tight and pitying. Rows of families cheered, a sea of cameras flashing. My empty chair in the audience was a stark void everyone could see. My mother's seat, my brother's seat, my stepfather's seat, all vacant. I walked back to my place, the silence around me louder than any noise. No one met my eye. They just kept clapping for the next kid, the one with a family waiting. The betrayal wasn't in the empty chairs. That was just the final public proof. The betrayal was orchestrated by my stepfather, Mark, weeks before. He called it a logistical issue. My brother's travel baseball team had a can't-miss tournament in another state, the same weekend as my graduation. One car, one driver, a choice had to be made. He presented it to my mother not as a choice but as a simple, unavoidable fact. "We'll celebrate with her another time," he said. I heard him through my bedroom door. My mother's response was a soft, defeated murmur. She didn't fight for me. She never did. Not against him. Mark had always been a man of quiet, rational cruelty. He never raised his voice. He wielded practicality like a weapon. When I was 16 and needed a laptop for school, he explained how the family budget was tight, but my brother needed new top-tier gear for his athletic ambitions. My brother got the gear. I used the library computers. It was always this way. My needs were negotiable. My brother's potential was an investment. Mark's biological son came first. I was the leftover piece from a life my mother was trying to forget. She married him for stability, she said. The cost of that stability was her daughter. On the morning of my graduation, the house was silent. They had left before dawn to make the 8-hour drive. A $50 bill was left on the kitchen counter next to a note from my mother. "So proud of you. Order yourself a nice dinner. Love, Mom." The money felt like a tip, a payment for my compliance. I put on my cap and gown alone. I drove myself to the ceremony in my beat-up car, the one I'd bought with tips from my after-school job. I sat through the speeches, acutely aware of the families surrounding me, the mothers fussing with their children's tassels. My own mother was in a bleacher seat hundreds of miles away, watching my brother warm up on a baseball diamond. Mark had made the calculation. My achievement was a passive, completed event. My brother's game was an active, unfolding opportunity. In his ledger, the choice was clear, and my mother allowed her signature to be on the bottom of that page. The graduation was not an anomaly. It was a data point in a long, quiet study of my own irrelevance. I began to see the pattern everywhere, traced back through years. It was in the Christmas photos where I was always slightly out of frame, having been handed the camera first to take the picture of the three of them. It was in the way my birthday dinners were flexible, often postponed if my brother had practice, while his were celebrated on the exact date with fanfare. My 18th birthday itself had been a quiet, rushed affair, a grocery store cupcake after my brother's playoff game. Mark had said, "At your age, it's not such a big deal anymore." The financial calculus was the most transparent. College applications cost money. SAT prep books cost money. "We need to be strategic," Mark would say, spreading imaginary spreadsheets between us at the dinner table. My brother's private coaching, his tournament fees, his equipment, these were line items guaranteed to yield a return. A college scholarship for him was the family's goal. My education was an open question, a burdensome variable. I took out my own small loan for community college classes, registering in secret. When I mentioned it, Mark nodded, not with pride but with relief. "Good initiative," he said. It was the same tone he used when the dishwasher broke and I figured out how to fix it. The most painful part of the pattern was my mother's complicity. It was her silence that ratified every decision. Her betrayal was a series of small surrenders. She would give me an apologetic look from across the room, a fleeting touch on my shoulder after Mark had dismissed one of my needs. It was a silent language that said, "I know, but please don't make a scene." She traded my dignity for peace in her marriage. Her love for me became a private, shameful thing to be expressed only in the quiet moments when his back was turned. She taught me that to be loved conditionally by a man was more important than to love your child unconditionally. I learned to make myself small, to need less, to disappear into the background of their nuclear family portrait. I was a guest in my own home, perpetually on the verge of overstaying my welcome. The empty chairs at graduation were just the final, logical eviction notice. The boundary was a single piece of paper. It arrived in a thick, official-looking envelope a month after graduation. It was a notice from the landlord, a copy addressed to me. My eyes scanned the legalese until they found the core sentence. Please be advised, the lease for the property will not be renewed upon its end, date of August 31st. My stomach dropped. We had lived in that house for 10 years. At the bottom of the notice, in the required field listing all adult tenants, was my name. I had been added to the lease when I turned 18. Mark had handed me the pen, calling it a step into adulthood. I found my mother in the kitchen. Did you know about this? I asked, my voice eerily calm. She wouldn't meet my eyes, wiping the same spot on the counter. Mark thinks it's time for a fresh start. A smaller place. The market is so good for sellers right now. She spoke in his phrases. Where am I supposed to go? I asked. The question hung in the air. She finally looked at me, her eyes pleading. You're so resourceful, honey. You'll find a place. Maybe with friends. This is a chance for you to spread your wings. She made my impending homelessness sound like an adventure she was gifting me. That was the moment. The boundary wasn't the eviction. It was her framing. It was the expectation that I would once again absorb the inconvenience, solve the problem they created, and do it all without complaint. I stood there, watching her twist the dish towel in her hands, waiting for my reaction. She expected tears or anger or desperate bargaining. I felt nothing, just a cold, clear silence where the begging for belonging used to be. I realized I had spent a lifetime holding a cup under a drip, hoping for enough water to survive. They were draining the well and telling me to be grateful for the air. I didn't say a word. I took the notice, walked to my room, and closed the door. I didn't slam it. The quiet click of the latch was louder. In that silence, I let the final thread snap. I was no longer their daughter or his stepdaughter. I was a logistics problem they had solved. I did not argue. I did not beg. I packed my car with what truly mattered to me: documents, some clothes, my laptop in the dead of night. I left the $50 graduation bill on the kitchen counter. I did not leave a note. The next morning I called the community college and explained I needed to withdraw due to homelessness. The counselor, her voice soft with a pity I didn't want, connected me to a social worker. I started the paperwork for housing assistance, my status as an involuntarily displaced dependent granting me a fragile priority. I got a second job working overnight stock at a warehouse. The silence of my life became practical, filled with tasks and forms. The consequences were systemic, not personal. Mark and my mother's plan for a smaller, cheaper apartment hit a snag. Their rental history, now containing a hastily broken lease and a non-renewal notice, raised flags. Landlords asked for references. The dream of downsizing for profit stalled. My brother's baseball team made a regional final. My mother posted a photo online, her smile too wide. A family friend commented, "So great. Where's my name for the big win?" The comment sat there, unanswered, for days before disappearing. My absence became a quiet question mark in their social circle, one their glossy posts couldn't quite erase. I heard through a friend of a friend that Mark told people I'd chosen to be independent, that I was too rebellious for family life. He exposed himself with that narrative. Those who knew me even a little heard the dissonance. The story began to sour in the telling. My silence was my reply. I found a room to rent in a house with an older widow. It was quiet and clean. I paid my share on time. One evening, sitting in my bare room, eating soup from a can, I felt it. Not happiness, not victory, a profound, unshakable calm. The peace of no longer waiting for a rescue that was never coming. The dignity of my own silence. I was moving forward, not away. The road was mine alone, and for the first time that felt like enough. I never saw them again. Not in person. The social worker helped me petition for emancipation, which was granted based on abandonment. It severed the legal ties, a clean administrative cut. The widow I rented from, Mrs. Allen, started leaving a plate of dinner for me on nights she cooked extra. She never asked for money or stories. She'd simply say, "A growing girl needs her strength," and continue knitting in her chair. Quiet, no-strings kindness was a language I had to relearn. I saved every extra dollar from the warehouse job. 6 months after I left, I was promoted to a daytime shift supervisor. The work was hard, but the rhythm was mine. I enrolled in a single-night class at the community college, paying in cash. It was a course on personal finance. I learned about credit, about leases you sign for yourself, about interest. I opened a bank account with only my name on it. The first time I logged in and saw my own savings, a small but growing number, I cried. They were not tears of sadness but of sheer astonishment at a fact so simple: this is mine. I drove past the old house once. It was empty. A for sale sign staked in the yard. I didn't feel a thing. It was just a structure. The home had died long before the sale. My mother sent a text on my 19th birthday. It said, "Thinking of you today, hope you're well." I stared at the words. They were generic, a greeting card sentiment. There was no, "I love you," no, "I'm sorry," no, "Where are you?" Just a vague, well-wishing bullet fired into the void. I didn't reply. My silence was no longer a weapon or a wound. It was just my peace. I had nothing to say to her. I used a portion of my savings for two things. I paid a proper first and last month's rent on a tiny studio apartment. It was mine. The second thing I did was find her. The homeless woman who sometimes sat outside the old library. Her name was Eleanor. I brought her a warm coat, a gift card to the grocery store, and a thank you card. I wrote inside, "You showed me that survival is a kind of grace. Thank you for your kindness that day." She didn't remember me, but she took the gifts with dignified thanks. It wasn't about being remembered. It was about completing a circle, acknowledging that my life had been altered by a stranger's quiet decency when my own family's had failed. The $50 from my graduation, the one I'd left behind, I eventually replaced. I folded a fresh $50 bill and put it in the back of my wallet. I keep it there still, not as a symbol of what was taken but as a token of what I can now provide for myself. It is my quiet, paper-thin proof. I am here. I am anchored. The storm they created finally passed and I'm still standing on my own ground.